Okay, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. I know it's not the best time for everybody because we have this called time zones, but those of you who are joining a little bit off hours, thank you. And I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Accounting for Impact team, whom I will introduce very soon. So we've been advertising and promoting this event, this launch event, for a little bit now. We've been working on it. I'd like to first maybe quickly introduce, because they will be speaking one after the other, but the AFI kind of team or the committee we call. So you can just wave at us. Erica Pimentel, wherever she's on your screen. Leanne Kitty, Joel Bocello, and Julie Bernard, and Alessandro Gio. And we will have our keynote speaker in the second part of our event, Stephanie Bertels. So I'm going to put up the agenda. So here, as you know, so the event is recorded, as you can see, because we're going to also share with the people who couldn't make it. So if you're not comfortable showing your camera on, just turn it off. It's okay. We're going to start with giving a bit of background of why we should do this, why we decided to set up this thing called AFI. I'm going to explain what it is, but I think I would also say how it started. So I will explain that in the first few minutes here. Erica will then move on to explain the partnership we have with CP Ontario, which is a great endeavor that we are very grateful for. Joel will talk about parallel efforts in other fields, because he's not an accountant, but nobody's perfect. So he's still going to tell us maybe how we got inspired. But so we have a very interdisciplinary perspective here. Then Leanne will talk about her experience as a public scholar and talk about the events and our focus. And Julie Alessandro will unveil the website. And then after that, we will turn over to Stephanie Bertels, our keynote speaker, who will give a presentation with Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. So I said, like, how did it start? I mean, this is more personal, but I'm sure many of you have started wondering our purpose, the purpose of doing research, and what our research, who does it reach, what impact does it have? And I've had conversation with several people, but there's these things of conversation and these things called action. And about a year ago, I think Erica and I, we discussed this quite in depth, and we said, we should really do something about it and try to help our research, especially in accounting, to get across the board beyond the academic audience. So you probably hear some of the humorous joke about the publish and perish, and wonder, okay, I mean, we're all going to perish anyway. So then we might as well do something good about our research and have an impact when we leave this place, for example, in a very dramatic way, we can say that. And there have been some concerns. For example, this article from the AACSB, published in the AACSB website, about the lack of impact, or the lack of, or infrequent impact, despite all of the investments and all the resources that have been devoted to research in business schools. You can see some of the numbers here: 60%, between 20 and 40 to 60%. And they conclude that it doesn't really reach the worlds of business or policy, and academic journals are not really read or cited beyond the academic community. And then they go on and say, well, with all these investment and all these resources devoted, and they give you some number here, there are also some lack of accountability. After all this money spent on us and researchers and research tools and all of the conferences and journal articles that we publish, there is no really accountability, no control to do that. And that was published really recently, as you can see, last year. Then there has been also some concern raised by editors of journals. This is from editors of Journal Management Studies. After reading an article earlier, they agree and that we have to have more impact, basically, right? So they define impact at research that influences how organizations and individuals think, behave, or perform. And they also really emphasize on there are different types of impact, all different forms, right? Not only academic impact. And they go on and say, well, we have 5 types of impact that they define: scholarly, practical, societal, policy, and educational. And so they just define them. As you can, they're pretty common sense, but they define them. But from what do we see? I mean, scholarly, academic, or educational, it's part of our job in terms of reaching research publications and teaching, I guess, when you make an impact in the classroom. But maybe some of the parts that we have missed or we are lacking and we may need to improve a bit is the practical, the societal, and the policy impact, which seem to be have been a bit overlooked. Maybe it's due to some of the lack of training or knowledge, or sometimes lack of desire, I don't know. And so they conclude, it says, well, there are outlets that, that we can publish in that are non-academic, and also some collaborative process. They talk about diverse set of stakeholders, so that's going beyond the academic community and addressing societal problems. And this was signed by 5 editors of the Journal of Management Studies in the Financial Times, also very recently, as you can see, as early as last year. What we have kind of observed specifically accounting scholars, but it could go beyond, we can discuss that maybe later, that we have been not so crazy about going beyond that, basically. Like, there is not a strong interest to become engaged beyond going, the academic or ivory tower, as we call, and with, not engaging enough maybe with stakeholders that have some actual influence, such as policymakers, regulators, practitioners, etc. Personally, I was early in my career, I've heard this statement that actually motivated me even more. It says, I don't want to engage with practitioners because I'm a serious academic. And to me, that was a very telling statement that, okay, this is not the way I see things. So this has been going on personally, at least for me. Then what we observe is that the comfort zone, the comfort zone may not be for everybody to go outside the ivory tower. So going to and presenting our work to academics in academic conferences, to accounting academics, actually, it's a very narrow kind of audience, and go beyond journal articles that are usually paywalled, hard to access, or so that aspect, and then maybe that desire to go for the next publication, whatever we call top tier journals. After doing some, of course, it's always exciting to go after those, but after you've done a few, is it really like the ultimate goal of an academic? We don't know. Other aspects that we can, we just put in these logos down there. With the advent of social media and blogs and conversation type of writings, I think we could make a better impact, or more powerful impact.
Intended to result in financial gain.
The tenured academics. So this is addressed to the tenured academics. This is Thorsten Sellhorn, former president of the EAA. During COVID, he was writing a blog about it, and I think really what he kind of nails it here. It says, what are we going to have leave in terms of our legacy, I guess? Is it about our publication and citation? Or is it about what we did for society and the world? So I compare it to the CV. Are you working for your CV or working for your obituary? So when you are no longer on this world, how do you be remembered? Dr. So-and-so, Professor so-and-so was, has done this, and that. Do you want to be known as the H-index high number person with the citations, or do you want to have a broader impact than just citations and say, we have made a difference in that aspect of society, for example. And some of the inspirations that we also had in management, actually done by, and Joel will speak more about that in detail, but I'll briefly say that coming from actually very younger scholars, PhD students, postdoc, assistant professors, has created this impact scholar community, which is quite active in management. Personally, I've attended a few of these events. It's really, really amazing to inspire scholars to make impact, exactly what we try to do, basically. Also a book that was quite inspiring too, also from management. Andy Hoffman published this book, very, very easy to read, but very powerful, called The Engaged Scholar. And you can see him expanding the impact of academic research in today's world. So I personally highly recommend, if you haven't come across that book. Those were some of our inspirations. Okay, we should do this for accounting basically now, because management has done quite a bit, and we should do something similar to our field. So what is accounting for impact? So we really believe in academic activism, social justice, and equity. And when I say we, the people that you have seen highlighted here, Leanne, Joel, Julie, and Alessandro, we have invited them several months ago to form a committee because Erica and I, the two of us, we couldn't just do everything. So they've been extremely helpful. We complement each other with different tasks, but we basically have the same kind of belief and aim to foster engagement. We believe that to make impact, we have to foster increased engagement. So we want to be obviously inclusive. This is not a network to favor one type of research or the other. It's accounting research in general. It can be tax, capital market to critical research. It doesn't really matter. All backgrounds, all experiences from junior to senior academics from anywhere. So we are really trying to make it accessible to everybody. And the activities that we are proposing are related around training, how to engage on those knowledge mobilization, communication, organizing events where we'll bring speakers and researchers to share their experiences, and also developing resources as we go. And we're also, of course, open to listen to everybody, to suggestions. We're starting this without having any kind of model except the inspirations we have from management. And then we basically want to reach outside of Ivory Tower, create impact through our research. So that's what AFI is. It's really a network, a resource repository, resource provider to try to help anybody who's interested. No guarantee that we can help everybody the same way or everything the same. We are starting with this, and this is what AFI is. I think now Erica will explain how we partner with CPA Ontario. Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Charles. So as Charles mentioned, maybe a year ago, we had this crazy idea of fostering a type of community that would encourage scholars to step outside the academy. And so we were thinking of, well, how can we make this work financially? And so we reached out to CPA Ontario, and they were immediately very supportive of the idea. And actually, I'd like to thank Leonie Phillips at CPA Ontario for her support from the get-go. And of course, CPA Ontario more broadly for their financial support of this project. And what I think attracted CPA Ontario to funding our project was that they shared our vision for turning research into action by being able to put research in the hands of the folks who might actually benefit from it. So next slide, please. So one of the pillars of AFI is to create engagement between research and practice. So our position is that academics are doing this great, rigorous, robust research that could really change how accounting is practiced. And so how can we put this research out there and put these ideas in spaces that might reach folks who will change how they do business based on these ideas? And so we want to equip academics with the tools to inform practice of their findings. And at the same time, we don't pretend that academics have all the answers, quite the contrary. Actually, we believe that practitioners who are out there in the trenches and who actually do accounting have a lot to tell researchers that can challenge how academics understand the world. So for instance, I am part of a working group at CPA Canada that's looking how to audit crypto assets. And so I get to sit around a virtual table once a month with partners from across the country to understand the struggles they face in providing assurance over this new and emerging space. And just understanding the challenges they have has radically changed my practice as an academic because I have a better appreciation for their pain points in the field. And so our goal at AFI is to foster these and similar partnerships where we can pair academics and practitioners to investigate questions that are important to both groups. And so I think this idea really spoke to CPA Ontario because they appreciated how this type of approach could be beneficial to their members. Of course, more broadly, we want to advance this approach to accounting scholarship across Canada and around the world, building on best practices where this type of knowledge exchange is common. And so now I'm going to pass it to Joel, who's going to describe some of these parallel efforts in other fields.
Great, thank you, Erica. So Charles is right, I'm from management, therefore I'm not perfect, but I will tell you a little bit about the efforts that are going on in parallel fields. And I think part of what we want to draw upon from those other fields, and particularly what we've done in management, is to look at not only the policies and the practices that improve engagement with outside stakeholders and with practitioners, but also to reconsider how we can reshape what we do within academia as well. What are the different policies and programs that actually prevent us from engaging in more impactful research and prevent us from disseminating our work? So I'll tell you a little bit about the work that I've done as part of the organization Scientists for Future, OS4F, which is a group that I co-founded with a few other management scholars. And our goal is to encourage management scholars to walk the talk when it comes to engaging with grand challenges, not only related to climate change, but also related to issues such as modern slavery, or perhaps resilience, or perhaps income inequality and social inequality. So those are the types of issues that we want to engage academics more with. So what we've done there, and I'll give you an example of the type of policies that we have there. One of the obstacles that we found is that when academics fly to conferences is that they will pick the cheapest route, which actually often tends to be the most carbon intensive route. So what we've thought about is to introduce alternatives where to encourage academics to take the train, for example. And what we've done is to organize workshops on the train, paper development workshops, to encourage academics, especially young academics, and provide them with an alternative approach and something which they will get value out of. Even though it takes longer and even though it might be slightly more expensive, there is some value to it. So these are the types of things that we are engaged with. And I think accounting as well is ripe for those types of interventions. And so beyond these policies, we also want to organize events such as this one, but create these platforms where we can bring together academics who are interested in impactful research and share the stories as well as the challenges that they've faced towards pursuing more meaningful research. And that storytelling is actually a key aspect of this type of research. I think once you have a critical mass of anecdotes and accounts of people who've managed to overcome the obstacles and make a meaningful career out of it, it's inspiring for a new generation of researchers. So part of doing this type of work, and this is not only within the organization Scientists for Future, but we see parallel efforts with the impact scholar community or responsible research in business and management that create awards, that create events, that create journal publications for journal special issues that are meant to encourage academics to engage in more impactful research. And the final thing that I want to mention is that the way that we also overcome the obstacles associated with more impactful research is through interdisciplinarity. So Charles and Erica and I have been working together on a project related to discussing what are the obstacles involved with interdisciplinary research and how we can overcome that. So with that being said, I'll pass it on to Leanne.
Thanks, Joel. I'm really excited to talk about some of the benefits that I've seen myself in terms of this type of engagement and work. I was fortunate enough to encounter this whole idea of being a public scholar during my PhD studies. And it really, I think, shaped how I viewed the role of an academic and the types of things that I could do with a career. And so the first thing I wanted to highlight was just this idea of engagement with the professional practice of accounting, and how do you get your work into the right hands at the right time is sort of how I think about it. One of the things that's been really personally rewarding for me was based on a paper I started in my dissertation, or not my dissertation, my PhD studies, around where sustainability accounting was in the CPA competency map. And that really led to work subsequently on with CPA Canada on incorporating, not just myself, of course, with lots of us in the field, but on incorporating sustainability accounting into the brand new CPA competency map. And what that will eventually do, it means that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of students over the coming periods of time will be studying sustainability accounting, in part supported by this idea of some academic work that moved towards this. So that was really personally rewarding, I think, for me to be able to see that and to be able to impact that in our profession. Next slide, please. I think it also has benefits for us individually. Although there's effort, of course, required to do this, this isn't necessarily the norm yet. So it does require some additional effort. So what do we get from that effort? We get the impact, of course, that we have on society and feeling good about those impacts. But I think it also helps to establish you as an expert. I think there's sort of win-wins that go along with this. Of course, industry, media will reach out to you because you start to establish yourself out there for us as younger academics or newer academics, which can also lead to really interesting research and different impacts that perhaps you hadn't even anticipated. And I think reaching a wider general audience has been another aspect that I've found really rewarding. So distilling my work and publishing in places like The Conversation, I've had so many amazing conversations with practitioners, people in industry. I get their insights. And so that, again, is really a two-way street. I feel like I get a lot of benefits out of it because I have a better sense of what's happening. I really get to connect with passionate people around the world who are interested in this space. And so I've managed to meet, I think, way more people around the world, even throughout the pandemic, than I probably ever would have. And that's led to some really new and interesting opportunities. Next slide. There are, I think, also interconnected benefits. Let's say, existing measures of success, things like citations. I think when we are able to get our work out there in these different ways and into the right hands, it does come back even in that other form of measurement in terms of citations. So again, for us newer academics, that's helpful for things like getting tenure. And I think that connection with industry and those relationships that develop can also lead to really interesting collaborative or co-created research, which I think will, again, have that snowball effect. And some of the things that have happened to me personally is in terms of writing in places like The Conversation, it's really been connected events that come after that. So that leads to an interview for continuing professional development, which leads to speaking on a panel, which leads to radio interviews. Right? There's sort of these continuous benefits and meeting really interesting and exciting people that, again, feeds back into the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I can't speak enough about the benefits myself, beyond the impact that you can have, of course, with your work and seeing that impact in society and knowing that it's going to go beyond just other academics, although I love all of us. It's nice to see it get out into the hands of people in society. Next slide, please. So in terms of events, and we'll go into a little bit more detail later, we do plan to focus on having both academic and practitioner events in line with, I think, the themes that we've talked about so far. Things like facilitated writing workshops. I know time is always a precious resource, but having time to block off to produce things like pieces for The Conversation, I think it really elevates the impact of the academic work. We put years of effort into these research papers, and in a very short amount of time, it can be translated into something like The Conversation to write pieces for other audiences that I think have really huge potential for very little extra effort beyond the work that you've already done. So we're thinking of things like practical instruction on different ways to get your work out there, social media, another great venue. And of course, we're always happy to hear your ideas for different events or topics or things that you would like to see in terms of engagement. So with that, I will pass it on to Julie and Alessandro.
Thank you very much, Leanne. I guess Julina will be sharing the Accounting for Impact website, which I will also post in the chat. Thank you very much, Julie. So, well, as we are now in 2022 and we cannot all visit Quebec, well, it's still a very beautiful city and be in physical presence here, we needed also an online space. So, of course, we need to go a bit old-fashioned and so still do a website, but we are also on social media and we will tell you a bit more later. So we created this website and I just posted now the link in the chat to create a platform for everyone to collaborate and also provide information. So the very first objective of this website is to provide the resources and information. So in this website, you can see resources, events, examples of projects that have been impactful and how they achieved this, and also a membership section. So for those that are of you familiar a bit with Alternative Accounting Research Network, ARN, the website works a bit in a similar way. So in the sense that you can find resources, but also be part of the community so that you can receive regular updates. So what you can find here is also who we are, what are our objectives, and as well as grand challenges. But I pass now to Julie to illustrate a bit more what you can find here in this beautiful, well-designed website that Julie mostly created.
Thank you, Alessandro. We wanted today to take you on a little guided tour. I have the feeling that most of us haven't done that in 2 years. So we're very excited to present this website, and I think I should start right away, and it shouldn't be a surprise for most of the committee member, but this is an English version of the website, but eventually I would very much like to translate it into a French version, so it would be a bilingual website. So for people who are speaking French, a French version is coming your way at some point in 2022. So this is our very nice, well-designed English version of our website. Alessandro has presented a bit the spirit behind it, so I will a bit show you what you can find. So here you have a condensed version of what we presented to you today. So the idea behind AFI, who we are, our project, and of course our beautiful pictures, and where you can find further information if you click on our profile, how you can join us, tweet at us, add us on LinkedIn if you feel like it. And of course, example of our project. So Joel talked about organization Scientists for Future. You can also find Opening Accounting and Manifesto, and I've seen that many of its 23 authors are in the room today, and many other projects that we did as a committee. We also added a section tackling grand challenges. There's only 6 of them, and as Charles mentioned, we want everyone in the network to feel included. So this section will, of course, evolve, so as will grand challenges will. And it's not because some of them are representing maybe more the committee research interest that it doesn't mean that it can't represent some of yours. So do not hesitate to get in touch with us if you feel that we're missing a grand challenge and you feel like there is key pieces of information that should be shared. We also have resources. Thank you, Erica, for finding them for us. Divided into 4 main sections. So knowledge mobilization, fostering research collaboration, writing and communication, and reaching your audience. And you can click on them and access toolkits and very easily access them. Again, this will also evolve the further we move along with AFI. And I think the section that everyone is the most excited about is what's next, so our next events. And I will let Leanne and Erica present the 3 upcoming events, I'm sorry.
Thanks so much, Julie. If you want to scroll back up just a little bit, yes, thank you. So our next main event that's coming up will be on social media to basically give some practical instruction on how to create a LinkedIn profile, how to use Twitter, when and how to use hashtags, retweets, how to understand Twitter engagement and increase your impact. So a very practical workshop, hands-on, to get you used to or comfortable with things like social media, and help you to move beyond that as well. If you can scroll down again, Julie. We have a concurrent session planned for the CAAA conference coming up as well. Now, the purpose here will be to look at social media, how to connect, how to do engagement through that as well, how to think about other aspects, perhaps a bit more in depth. And our third and another really exciting event will come this coming fall. When I mentioned facilitated writing workshops, this is what we were referring to. So this will be, again, hands-on, very practical writing workshop to get you comfortable with writing your op-eds, blogs, pieces for the conversation, ways to translate your academic work into more readily understandable for a general audience types of pieces. And so this will be facilitated with Sherry Graydon, who's an excellent facilitator with a ton of experience in helping academics to do exactly this kind of thing. And through this, you will create pieces that can be shared with the public. And I believe that is all of our events for now. So I'm going to pass that back to Charles.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Julie, you want to go? Go.
Yeah,
membership
just
section.
Membership sections. We gave before the last bit in this presentation website between the presentation and moving to the fantastic keynote, Stephanie, in a few seconds. We have created this website as a membership section, which is of course for free and open to everyone. So what's the idea? The idea behind this is basically to be part of this membership. In this way, you will receive the newsletter and the updates on a regular basis, as well as how the workshop will take place, online or in presence, or whether when they will take place, and whether you can how you can subscribe. And so how you do this, and we do a bit like in a class, we can have like 1 or 2 minutes where if you want to go on the website that I copy and paste before, but I will put it so now it's the last link in the chat. You can just go in the login part. Usually you can just briefly show. And in the login part, you can fill the different fields, and so you can be member. You can, of course, sign up now, which is a great occasion. It's for free, or you can sign up later. It will still be for free, but at least it's done. We know that we like to procrastinate, so better to prepone rather than postpone membership subscription. So maybe a few seconds of silence, concentration, and membership subscription, and then pass back to Charles and for the great keynote of Stephanie.
Great, thank you all for doing your part great on time. On the communication aspect, all the registrants of this event will receive a follow-up email with a video and a reminder to sign up with a link anyway. So don't worry, you will be in touch. We can stay in touch, and then social media is always there as well if you are on it. So this is now coming up to the second part, a very exciting part. We are very thrilled to have keynote speaker, Stephanie Bertels. She's a professor of business and society at the Bailey School of Business as Simon Fraser University. She's also the director of the Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability and the W.J. Van Dusen Professor. And Stephanie has been very engaged, visible, especially with her being a founder of the Embedding Project, which we'll talk at length about today. So very, very happy to welcome Stephanie. Basically for the next 45, 50 minutes, she will run it sort of as a talk, interactive, and she has great ideas to get us engaged and more impact. So thank you, Stephanie, and the floor is yours. You can share your screen too. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. Whoever sent me the unmute, I had shared my screen already and couldn't reach the little button. So thanks everyone. Hopefully you're able to see the slides okay. And it is my absolute pleasure to be here. This is a conversation that's really near and dear to my heart. And so, you know, I hope through sharing the journey that I've been through that maybe there's some ideas there. The idea here is not to kind of overwhelm or say this is the way that it should be done, but just to share one person's journey of how they've been navigating this space. And then certainly I'm really thrilled and happy to answer any questions or pass on any ideas or experiences. So please don't hesitate to comment or add questions to the chat. And then, as Charles mentioned, rather than speaking the whole time, I thought it would be great because this really is also an effort to build a community and for each of you to get to know each other. We'll break out for a period of time into some breakout rooms where people have a chance to share what their interests are, share what their needs are, and then maybe come back and share some of that with us so that some of those needs and questions we might be able to start to address right now in this session, but others become ideas for how to take this network forward. So I have, as Charles mentioned, been developing this project called the Embedding Project for over a decade now, really. And I see it as a global public benefit research project. The focus is to help companies to embed sustainability across their operations and decision-making. And I do want to say, especially for those of us who are part of the geography that we call Canada now, that I appreciate very much your tax dollars that have helped to support some of this work over the years. You'll see through a number of grants from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. And so that's one of the things I'll talk about is how do you find the funding to support this kind of work, because it requires resources. And so this partnership, for instance, that Accounting for Impact has created with CPA Ontario is a great example of being able to leverage the interest and the value that can come from this. So, we partner with companies around the globe. This is kind of a smattering of the companies that we've had a long-term engagement, many of them for more than a decade. And the idea is that through really understanding their needs, we develop tools that they need to embed sustainability. And we do that through engaging in strong social science research. And then what we do is that we then take those ideas and what we've been learning. So, those ideas have formed part of people's PhDs of our own research projects, but we also then work to share those ideas in much more digestible guidebooks that we then share with the rest of the world for free through this. So when I show you what we've been able to build over the past decade, it might feel overwhelming. And so this slide helps you to realize that it's been, a more than 10-year journey from when I first started to develop the initial framework in a systematic review, through the Network for Business Sustainability, which I'm sure a number of you on the call are maybe involved with. And then this formation of an initial working group to try and take that framework and further refine it and create some diagnostic and assessment tools. And the idea behind that was to use this tool as a way to gather a really rich, long-term longitudinal data set from around the world, from companies around what they're doing, how they're going about doing it, and with what degree of success. And so, through that process, we ended up forming partnerships with colleagues in South Africa, expanding our work to work with leading South African companies, developed this online portal initially for gathering data, and then through funding from SSHRC, through funding from the partner companies that we work with, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, that funding is pooled into kind of a common pool. So it's not consulting or quid pro quo money from companies, but rather funding that's brought together to create for the specific purposes of creating a public benefit. And so then we were able to kind of
launch these various tools, and I'll explain some of these as we go along. But I guess the thing to think about is like, what is the model? How do we do this? And so on the left-hand side, we have practice and practitioners. And for us, that actually includes accountants, a surprising number of accountants in the work that we do, since accountants, as you all know, go on to take on leadership and executive and governance roles in many companies. But the focus really for us is executives and decision makers in companies. And so what we do is we start with, in the top middle there, we talked about in terms of practices assessments and understanding what it is that companies are doing. That develops data for us. It helps us engage in theory development and hunches, and then theory testing through more gathering of data. And then we develop, so we refine that theory and publish academic articles and research tools, and that kind of helps us engage in new research collaborations. But it also produces from that these tools and resources that we bring into these communities of practice that we've set up, these peer communities that we have around the world, and that sometimes we draw from those around a particular topic. Whether it's related to goal setting or even to capital allocation. So we have these little, micro projects that where we do deep dives into particular topics. And through that, then we're able to publicly release resources for practitioners. We're able to create teaching materials for educators. And we can disseminate all of that through our website, through our partner companies, and ultimately the goal then is to achieve a change in practice. And so this model of engagement has kind of remained surprisingly consistent over time. And so, the core of that is these peer networks that we have, and it's been really gratifying to see that for those practitioners who engage in these peer conversations, that it's this moment to step away and to really reflect and to have that space for reflexivity and to really kind of engage in an interrogation of their own practice and how they can begin to shift it. And so I think part of what I see is so beautiful about the work that we can do as scholars is we're very good at taking large amounts of data and making sense of them and kind of bringing some clarity to that. And so through doing that, providing the kinds of evidence and the confidence that practitioners need in order to take action and to feel that they can take action. So, so that's, one piece of it. And then also, I talked about this, the kind of the core of this rich longitudinal data set that we've been gathering over the course of a decade is to really understand and dimensionalize what the pieces of that journey look like. What are the practices that companies actually engage in? And so by creating an artifact, a framework that helps them to think about their own work, it helps them understand their maturity, it helps them benchmark, it also helps us to direct them towards the kinds of tools that would actually support furthering that work or taking on that work when they identify places where they need to do that. And so in some ways, in many ways, I would say what we do is act as a curator of knowledge. And so that extends also into data. As researchers, we gather a lot of data, we create data sets, we compile them, and frankly, we often hoard them. And so what we need to recognize is all of that data collection and scrubbing and analysis work that we're doing can often have real value for those who are actually trying to engage in practical work that don't have the resources, the time, or the expertise to kind of compile these data themselves. And so in this case, one of the things was we started looking at comparing corporate goal setting, and we compiled this very big data of corporate goals where we had gone in and coded it. And through creating an accessible database where people could go for free and to search and to see what leading goals look like and what examples of those are, but also to be able to transparently assess the goals that companies are setting. This allows us to help to elevate practice very rapidly. And so we've seen a tremendous amount of traction from this data set. And similarly, and this in fact was work in partnership with CPA Canada. They had recognized this need to help directors understand what it would look like to take a credible public position on issues. And so again, as part of that process of trying to help inform what that would look like, we had interviews with hundreds of directors and board chairs, but we also assembled this big database of position statements where related to a number of different topics, across a range of geographies and sectors, and where we were assessing, we were coding, what we were seeing in those position statements. And so by making that publicly available, it helps to drive practice because companies then can see what a good quality statement looks like, what the characteristics are, and how they could go ahead and improve their own statements. So I would really encourage you to think not just about the articles that you produce, but also to think about how you could redeploy some of the data sets that you produce, and that often are at a really large cost, right? Like that's a lot of the energy that we put into creating our research. So the other thing that we've been able to do is really leverage the work, so in this instance, one of my former PhD students and postdocs, Jess Schulshank, was following executives around trying to understand how they were using stories and storytelling in shaping the strategic decisions that were happening in companies, because we have this myth of rationalism and rational actors, but we know that actually when it comes to enacting strategy within organizations, a lot of it has to do with making a compelling case and bringing forward stories. And so this is a great example of being able to then take that information and redeploy it in a way that can be helpful to others. And similarly, we've done work over the years interviewing CEOs, interviewing heads of sustainability, how they are trying to support their CEO and their decision-making around sustainability, but then also talking to those leaders about the impact that it actually is having. And so, and even the personal journeys, Cécile Ferron, who has just finished her PhD at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, one of our partner institutions, and I sat as well on her committee with Ralph Hammond, is, she was really trying to understand how privileged insiders, those of us who have benefited really from the institutions around us, and the inequality that they afford, how do we come to the point of realizing that we need to play a part in changing those institutions? And so, I'm just trying to signal that we can do deep theoretical work that at the same time helps to inform practice. So this Becoming an Agent of Change guide is one that I've shared with executive MBA students. And it's really gratifying to see them come back at the end of the course and talk about how of all the resources that we covered or shared, that these are the ones that have been very, very impactful in helping them think about and reflect on and change their own practice. So the last piece in our journey is that we're now thinking about, and sorry, I'll just mute that so you're not enduring it, but we're now thinking about how we could take some of what we've developed and make it even more approachable. So, guidebooks are one way. As academics, we often think about writing, but it's been a really interesting journey for me to think about how you take some of these ideas and you bring them into a more visual space and start to use medium like video, just little interactive GIFs and dynamic, ways of expressing what we're doing, I think has been really, really interesting and really gratifying. But it's a whole set of skills, as you can imagine, over time that we need to learn. And so that's where I think some of the work, I'm so excited about some of the work that you guys are proposing to do here, because it really allows for the development of those skills. It's a different kind of writing. It's a different kind of communication. It's almost like speaking a different language. And I know when I first started out, my inclination was, because we're trained to do that as scholars, is to qualify everything that I was putting forward, and to kind of reduce it, and to not speak beyond my data, and not speak beyond the things that I felt that were the direct kind of findings. But it's not to say that I still rely very definitely on strong research, but I think it's okay for us to be a bit speculative about the implications of what we're seeing, as long as we are honest about that speculation, right? So here's what I'm seeing, and here's what I think it might mean. And I think that I've really found that engaging with senior executives, they really appreciate that. They appreciate that honesty, that forthrightness. They appreciate having their ideas challenged in a different way. Many of us are often looking for that. And so I think that that's been a really big part of my own growth in this process. So, sorry, I'll just go back to sharing screen. So I just wanted to share maybe some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So one of the things is that at a certain point, I took the time to articulate a set of principles. And for me, it was around, I'm not a consultant, I'm a researcher. Everything that I do is for public value. So it's not a judgment, it's just I made a decision at a certain point that I was not going to take financial compensation. So although we receive money from companies, I don't take that. It's something that I decided because, to release everything under a Creative Commons, to make sure that it can be shared and used by all. I'm not saying that's what you need to do, but I think you need to have that clearly in your head when you're engaging in this kind of work, to really reflect on and understand these kinds of things. As I said, everything that we do is grounded in strong social science research, and collaboration is something that underpins everything that we do. And the other piece that is hard, to be honest, is we are curious, we are inquisitive, but we are also responsive. And so that means we're committed to co-creation, we're committed to rapid prototyping, we're committed to iteration and refinement. And that means we put out things that may not feel totally and fully done. And for academics, that can be really scary, because we're used to having multiple rounds of revise and resubmit, where we can really get comfortable with our own ideas and have this kind of sheltered piece. So you have to build a community of practitioners with whom you're willing to share that early work and pilot that early work in order to be able to gain that same level of confidence and the willing to put it out there. And so, so here are my key tips. Be useful. Try and solve a problem that people actually need solved. And to do that, I attend a lot of industry conferences. I follow industry social media channels. I've spent a lot of time building relationships with practitioners that are working in my area of interest. And I really listen to their challenges. So my next tip is don't become their consultant. And it's not to say that you can never be a consultant, but you need to be really clear. So we are really vigilant about maintaining our status as researchers. We're really vigilant about saying the conditions under which we will engage as thought partners. We are very clear about what we will do and won't do in terms of supporting partner companies. I think just be really careful with pitch decks and promises of deliverables, because once you go down that road, in order to secure access or secure funding for your research, it's a very slippery slope, because if you enter into a company in the mode of pitch decks and deliverables, then you become kind of the procurement pathway, and it becomes very difficult to move away from that identity. So just be very mindful as you think about how to do that. And my next tip is engaging in a way that generates great data. So as you're designing studies, really think about what is the data that you're trying to generate, and how are you going to be able to get that data? So you can hear from what I've told you about the work that we do that access to senior decision makers is really important to us. And so we include access to data and access to senior leadership in our MOUs, or our project agreements. We develop really long-term relationships that create opportunities for longitudinal data, because again, that's important for the kinds of research questions that we're trying to address. And I also include commitments for those organizations to review and comment on interim findings, because in the same way that our academic publishing system fails if we have no reviewers, your impact fails if you have no impact-based reviewers. And so really thinking about how you build that relationship of reciprocity. And so then the last piece, and we've talked about this a bit already on the call, is building an online presence. And I think, it can be very time consuming for sure. I think that there are ways to manage that, but without it, it's part of building that identity and that credibility. And so when practitioners look you up, if they don't find anything, right, then that's tough. They need to have somewhere where they can go and they can understand a little bit about more you do. And, I know there are lots of academics that don't even, for instance, have a LinkedIn page, right? Because what do you need a LinkedIn page unless you're on the job market? Well, it actually becomes quite an important piece of establishing an identity out there. So that's it for me for right now in terms of these, what I wanted to share, and just I'm happy to answer questions or hear comments, or turn it over to Charles and others if we want to take it out into some breakout rooms.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. That was very relevant, obviously, to our initiative, and I'm sure we all benefit from your tips. Actually, from your ideas, we love the idea of having the breakout room. So maybe you can, why don't we have like I don't know, like 4 people per room? Is that reasonable to you? You're the one who suggested that idea to me.
Yeah, so yeah, I think 5 or 6 is a nice number. And so the idea is that we'll just go shortly into some breakout rooms for maybe about 12 minutes, and just to have a chance for people to reflect on what they've been hearing, also to just introduce yourselves, because this is also about community building. And so since we're doing some introductions, let's maybe say like 15 minutes, and then we'll come back. And then if in those conversations, ideas, things that people want to share, hopes and dreams for what this is going to become, or questions emerge from that, then you can come back and let us know. So this is the chance for all of us to kind of get to know each other as part of a new and expanding community.
Great. Well, I see about 80 people here. I'm going to create about 20 rooms randomly, and then go automatic. I just put an option to make sure that close after. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to open a room, and then you can all go there. I'm not sure if co-hosts can go in there, or are we assigned there. I guess we are. Oh, Erica,
Hi, Charles.
you are here.
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Oh.
It's like late here. Just have a look. Okay.
I know, sorry. And Mary, are you here?
Yes.
Ah, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Where are you joining us from? Erica and I, we know each other very well. I don't know, I ended up here. But where are you based, Mary?
Well, I am in Emporia, Kansas.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so you're not, it's not too late for you. You're close to me.
Yeah, so it's like 2:30.
Yeah. Okay. And
Okay,
you
no,
are,
no bad.
I guess, an accounting faculty, or because we have people from all over the background.
Yes, so I'm the chairperson of my accounting department, accounting, information systems, and finance.
Okay. Great. And how did you end up joining? Did you see us? How did you find us to this event? Because I mean, I personally, we sent it to so many people. We can't keep track.
No, I was in the great session like 2 weeks ago, and you announced this. So I joined during that meeting. Yes, you were awesome.
At what session? At a AAA session?
Yes, the We Are session, like about 2 weeks ago, I think it
Oh,
was.
yeah, on the
Remember that one?
manifesto. Yes, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I talked about that. Yeah, I mean, I talk about it everywhere I go, so probably.
It was great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I mean, I don't know. I didn't know that as host or organizer we end up in this group, but the idea was Stephanie said that it would be good to get to know each other on a smaller setting. And so I don't know if you have any. And Erica, she's from Italy, but you know.
Wow.
Yeah, she's joining. It's quite late there. It's the 9:30. So.
Yeah, I'm like, home. How can I say?
Yeah, I've seen you work later than that, but you shouldn't. I'm not saying you should.
Yeah, no, I'm doing like I'm updating at the moment, like office students, page in the meantime that I'm attending the seminar,
Okay. Well, I don't know if you have any ideas, questions that you want to. I'm not sure. Like every group will have a time to debrief, I guess. But I think the idea was to just build a community, as Stephanie says, and discuss about things and possibly maybe share things if we have a chance in the big room. So.
Yeah, Charles, that this like this idea is very close to me, because that I really think that we need to be more impactful to society. So honestly, I also took note about like this idea I didn't know about, the organization Scientists for Future, or the other one, RRBM, like ideas to, I don't know how, make speak in a non-academic way to help, the policymaker, managers, I don't know, who is, doing the things in the business and the society, maybe to change their way to do or change some. I don't know. I think that when I see the idea impact, the word impact, I see the idea to change something that we think is wrong. This is what I feel. And that I really love this idea. So thanks to you and to all the, staff to put together this.
Well, I think when I presented thing in Italy last time, that's what I told you, this is going to happen. So now you've seen, this is it. It was mainly the website, but it took a month and months to get this. So
I understand.
Yeah. So Mary, what are your first, like, I don't know, ideas, comments, questions, concerns about this, or impressions?
Well, I'm still learning. I mean, so about all of this, and so I'm kind of new to everything. So I know impact is everything. If there's no impact, then there's no rationale.
But what is your take on the things that we have raised as issue? For example, having, being focused a bit, maybe a lot on, the academic audience, academic journals, conferences, and not going beyond that. Do you think it's a matter of not knowing or not wanting, or both? Because for me, I've seen both, like people who just systematically refuse, and my job is not that. And then you have those who try to want to, but they don't know, have the maybe the training or the tools, which in that case, AFI is there to help, right? So.
And I feel a lot of it also is that the way that credit like is extended for tenure and promotion, you know, it almost like makes you want to focus on what you know will be accepted, you know.
So
both
in terms of like
yeah.
career secure,
Yes.
like you have to be safe.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a big issue, honestly.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I understand for a little bit junior faculty who are, you know,
Under
it's
pressure.
very important. Yeah, but then it's more from the senior faculty who already have, you know, the established job. It's called tenure. And I don't see necessarily a senior faculty doing more. In fact, all of the AFI team members, they're all junior. So Julie is a PhD student, right? Erica is an assistant professor. Not you, Erica, but Erica Pimentel. So Joel just got tenure last year, and I'm the oldest one. I'm the only one who's old. So you know, when you see those young, you know, generation that they want to do beyond, they understood that maybe the research that we publish in academic journals is not going to go very far if you don't make it more impactful, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Mary, if you are the,
this is a big change, you know, Charles. I think these are really big change in academia, and I really hope, you know, it will. I mean, it will change. I hope that academia will change, because for me, my experience that now is too much focus, you know, on this like career track, publication, like publish or perish system.
Yes.
And I really think that, you know, if these, I mean, maybe I can call like movements, you know, that you start to create, help all the academic system to reflect about this, for me, like is a big achievement.
Yeah, but we're trying to just raise the issue, and then whatever, if somebody wants to join, but for example, Mary, no pressure, but if you are the department chair, you could encourage your more senior colleagues to say, hey, you know, we should do more stuff outside the journals and to make more impact, because I'm sure they do great research, and then we don't know about it, right? And then if you don't know about it, then there's no way we can make any difference. You know, kind of research, to be honest, I didn't want to say it in a talk like this, but I think it has almost very little impact, to be honest. So that's the issue. That's why we're doing this, right? To have more the impact that we could have. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, do you feel that like AACSB supports this type of model?
Well, I think I don't know about ASCSB in the US, international, but I know in the UK, the REF, they call it the Research Exercise Framework or something like that, or they have this component called impact now, you know, research impact. So if they start measuring those things, maybe this will be part of the evaluation, right? So
and that's what I feel, that it's going to have to be part of an evaluation for people to have a real interest, even if they have interest.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a shame that it has to come to that. I think it should come intrinsically. You know, like, okay, what am I gonna do at the end of my career, or once I get tenure and I can do whatever I want? So, yeah. But anyway,
but, you know, it's almost like, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. No,
No, I was just going to say that it's really, I think people feel more forced to do research because it is out of their element.
Yeah.
Because they just join groups to get articles. I mean, so I think it's more of a mechanical process than it is a passion or love.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna be kicked out soon, so hopefully we'll engage back. It was nice to meet you, though. At least
so nice meeting you both. Thank you.
And Erica, thanks for staying up. You don't have to, but we're gonna wrap up probably in 20 minutes. So see you back then.
Don't worry, I stay here. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I will leave the breakout room to see who's up there. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Okay. You can leave the room and you go to the main room now. So you can.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Recorded.
Hi, everyone. So welcome back. And I know we were having a lovely conversation in our group. I'll maybe just share sort of two things that came up. One was, you know, how do you start to build this trusted network of people that you have that help you with translations? So I was saying it really takes some time to have that group of people that you can take your early hunches and ideas and early models to, and have them say, oh, well, I see what you're trying to say here, but if I use that word, my leadership would interpret it this way, right? Or, well, okay, that's really great, but I would really avoid, this piece of it makes a lot of sense. This piece of it actually is a bit, confusing. Do you even need that piece? So that was the kind of, so how did I do that at early stages? I offered to speak at industry association conferences because they're very frequently looking for good quality content. They love content that's coming out of universities. And it's a nice place to start to try out your ideas. And then it's also a nice place to meet people who, come up afterwards and like those ideas. So the other thing that I have learned along the way is stories, lots of storytelling. And so I think we know that from our teaching, but very often we have a tendency as theorists to develop these kind of abstract concepts. And we have application ideas in our mind, but the more you can tell stories that are illustrative of those concepts, so don't talk just about business disruption risk in the abstract, but really sort of help people understand what that might look like in terms of how it might manifest. So I think those are two things that we were chatting about. I guess I wonder, are there other groups or ideas or things that came forward or needs? So either pop them into the chat or go ahead and let us know that you wanted to share. Charles or Erica, anything interesting coming out of the groups you were in?
I had a conversation about the lack of incentive, for the career, of how difficult it is maybe to get your mindset around it, because it's not recognized and rewarded by your institution. That's a typical issue, right? That's a systemic issue because those things don't count as much as a journal publication. So that's something that came out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the flip side of that is that may be at the very early stages, but at later stages, I guess it depends what kind of data that you gather and what kind of data that you use. As someone who's more embedded in organizations doing a bit more qualitative research, negotiating access to data is one of the most time-consuming parts of being able to get a study off the ground. And so having a ready set of network to say, hey, and I don't know if Marc-Antoine is still on the call, but Marc-Antoine is one of my PhD students based at HEC. And, he's in some ways the beneficiary of that, right? He's like, here's what I want to study. And I'm like, no problem. I'll call up the 10 companies that I know and we can start talking about that tomorrow. So I think it's an investment. And I think people kind of paint it as an either or. And I just don't see it that way. I see it as like, I don't know how to do research any other way. And it starts to just become who you are and how you engage in research over time.
Yeah. Similarly, in my group, we were early career scholars, all of us, and we were quite motivated in thinking about like who we want to be when we grow up. And this is very much the type of research that has impact for practice, reflects on who we want to be when we grow up. And I think one of the things that came up also is some of us in the group were CPAs in firms before doing our PhD. And so we already speak the language. We have like this shared collective memory with the people we're going to go talk to. And maybe that provides us some facility into at least doing research on firms. If we can go in and say, hey, we've been there before, these are your pointing points, let me help you understand them.
And so I totally agree. And I came from an engineering and environmental consulting background before I came in. And so I did feel that, but there is something that happens to us as we go through the PhD process where our writing changes and our way of speaking changes and the way that we go about things change. And so just to recognize you need to maintain that multilinguality, right? And as we know with every language, it's about ongoing practice of it. And so just giving a lot of chance for that interface to occur. And it's awkward at first, but then once you become very fluent in both sides, then there's a lot of room for you. And so that's the piece, that sort of, bridging piece that I really enjoy and very passionate about my work.
It's almost like code switching. You have to go and speak a different language and you go.
Absolutely. And to recognize that words that are deeply meaningful and very particular in our academic setting, that you would never utter those two words together because that would be nonsense, actually is really, like important and useful. And so, and also like how we know and understand buzzwords, right? Like triple bottom line or shared value or these kinds of things from having read the original source materials in a very nuanced way is very different from how they evolve into being used in practice and what they become a code for. And, so there's you're mostly accountants, so this kind of operations management reference might not mean as much, but, in the practice world, like Kaizen means Kaizen basically means, oh God, they want to squeeze like another 1% out of us, right? So, it has a very different, these things take on a very different spirit as they move into the practice world, depending what's been done with them. And being aware of that becomes important. Yeah.
Right. Is there anybody from the group? I still see that we have a good over 50 people here. From a group discussion that you want to share instead of me or Erica or AFI team to speak. So make sure you don't be shy. So
can I say something? Do you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
we can hear you.
Maybe raise the hand function if it's going to be more people. So we don't. So Reese, go ahead first.
Okay.
Go ahead, Reese.
We were talking about the difference between in the practice world, the writing a paper will take sometimes 2, 3, or 4 years. That's quite a long time for the practice world. So you have a problem right now, and you say, well, I'm a researcher, I can give you the answer, and you'll have it in 3 years. So that's sometimes that doesn't fit together, I think.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways to think about that. If you have early findings, there's nothing stopping you from writing a conversation piece on those early findings, right? To sort of get that out. And in some ways that can be really helpful because you put it out there and you maybe get feedback on it. And that feedback maybe becomes useful to you in subsequent later stages of review because it helps you sharpen your idea in the same way that presenting at conferences helps us to sharpen our idea. So I think that we mustn't, and this is that whole thing that we're taught in academia is it must be perfect. It must be, its final thing before we bring it out into the world. And yeah. I just think the kinds of problems that if you're here, you're probably here because you realize that there are impactful things you want to do to support change in the world, right? And there's an urgency to do that. And we mustn't censor ourselves because I'll tell you, there are tons of, but there are tons of consultants and random pundits out there who are expressing their opinions about all sorts of things. And especially, those, women, people of color on the call who your voices are so crucial to come into the space and contribute and change it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can share some ideas or research on a short notice and then later publish a paper with it in your academia world. I think that's yeah. And
the great thing is, by the time that comes out, it's another opportunity to then bring it back into the conversation again or other places, right? Some of these guidebooks that we've produced have been out there in the world for 2 or 3 years before the academic articles ever make it out there. Tobias.
Yeah, a little bit provocative. Does it get you tenure? Yeah. So, I love co-producing research with practitioners, with, people from Parliament, the scrutiny unit from Parliament. And you can publish it in good journals. Yeah. However, would it get you into AUS or stuff like that? Yeah. So that's kind of the thing I'm struggling with.
Certainly my research has appeared from these projects. My research has appeared in organization science and Journal of Management Studies, and I'm published. I've got another piece under review at AMJ right now. we're publishing this stuff in good journals. I think journals are also becoming more interested in interesting stories, right? And so I think when it's grounded in real practice, there is an appetite now for relevance and being able to legitimately talk about why this work is important is part of a justification for why it deserves to be published. Obviously, it has to be high quality scholarship. That's the foundation of all of this, but no one is saying that we would not do high quality scholarship. So in my, I think it is possible to get tenure doing this work, I think, but you have to do both, right? I think it's a struggle if you only sort of focus on the dissemination aspect of it. You still need to be producing those publications. Elena.
Yeah, thank you. So we were commenting on how difficult it is to get access to the companies, right? Because we might have the same interest and try to solve the same problem, but I feel like companies don't have time, and that's the main problem, don't have time to give you a 1 hour interview. So I don't know, like I would like to know a way to engage with companies so that we can work together and solve these kind of issues.
Yeah, so for me, it comes down to that be useful piece, right? So if we go back to Marc-Antoine's PhD, where he's interested in understanding how companies take sustainability goals and translate them into capital allocation decision-making. That, like, yes, we have that idea, but I had to find the companies for whom that is a challenge that they're facing right now, right? So you need to find that point of alignment. It's not about having a project and knocking on a door and saying, hey, I have this great idea, can I come do it? It's, hey, I have this hunch that this is something that you're trying to work out. I'm also trying to work it out, and here's what I bring to bear. So, in this case, for instance, it's been great that Marc-Antoine is a CPA and has been a financial controller in a company. So, then that brings a lot of credibility to us coming forward and saying we have the capability to act on this, right? So it's a match of, people can see it as an ask or they can see it as a free resource. And I think what you need to do is come to them and help them understand what the benefit will be to them, but not that you're like giving them a deliverable, but that you're going to act as a thought partner with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in our group, we talked about a couple of interesting topics. Also, I shared one of my project and dream. We have been working on, with several colleagues, mapping accounting research using text mining. And I'll be presenting about this on May 10th. And we want to share this data. Actually, we are developing Tableau dashboards. Literally, we gathered from 126 journals, we gathered all the research and abstract. We analyzed the abstract, created topics, and then for each of those topics, let's say auditing, we reanalyze and generate more topics, subtopics, and we're creating for all of these dashboards and trying to write papers for all of these topics, but writing 26 papers in a year is almost impossible job.
Of course, you're going to have to prioritize. But I will say we're also, those databases I showed you, we're using Tableau dashboards too. I think it's a fantastic way to do that visualization.
Yeah, that's why, we are presenting for the same reason that you're sharing publicly. We're presenting about this because we want to finish this project in a year, and we need people to collaborate with us. And we can do it if we have more people join us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, hopefully part of, you see, you've got people in this community who have data, who need people to help with it. You have people who have access that, that have capacity. So hopefully as you build this community, it becomes a place of reciprocity. So certainly as I've come together with people like Charlotte at HEC, with Jennifer Howard Grenville at Cambridge, with Ralph Hammond at the University of Cape Town. These are my long-standing collaborators where we've each had opportunities and we kind of share that because we have that point of alignment around wanting to work. And of course, Team Abansel at Ivy, who I've I've had a great and longstanding relationship as well, right? So
and one more thing I want to mention, like I know we're gonna add, also I have like this amazing data on hospitals. My research focus is really healthcare, accounting and finance, and text mining, natural language processing, all those stuff. But we have one of the richest data, like for example, cost accounting data. If you're interested in cost accounting research, I have that data for US hospitals, nursing homes. Oh cool. God, amazing data. If somebody's interested, come to me, contact with me so we can do more research.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that's something maybe for you guys to think about is data sets, right? It's like if people have data.
We have been working on
how
this.
You
actually.
can
we are creating
that.
We are creating actually a startup data analytics company. I am taking my sabbatical for this. And we have been working in this data warehouse, but we'll be also getting more people involved in this project, hopefully.
That's exciting. So maybe as a pop-up and then to turn it over to Charles and others to wrap up, if people want to take a moment to just in the chat to say, what are your hopes and aspirations for Accounting for Impact? And so what kinds of things, Fırat, you very passionately told us about, connecting data sets and people, and providing that kind of access. So, what is it that that you would hope maybe to gain from or possibly have to contribute to a network like this? Because that can become a foundation then for thinking about how it is that you move forwards. In our peer-to-peer communities, we have a section that we do on this, which is like gives and gets, right? Here's a knowledge piece that I have that I'm willing to share with the community. And here's something that I'm working on that I'm struggling with, and I wonder if others have insights into it. So we'll just take a minute and see what's coming through. So, right. Mapping using text mining, what kinds of things? We've heard negotiating access is a topic that people were interested in. Translating your ideas for practice. Yeah, how to share results with practitioners and how to reach them. Absolutely. Certainly, I'm happy to share what we've learned on that journey. We started from 20-page PDFs and now we've moved to 15-second GIFs. So yeah, there's been a big shift in people's attention. It used to be 14-minute TED Talks and now it's 7-minute TED Talks. So yeah, there's that ability to kind of convey things with visuals is very important. Co-creating, absolutely. Yeah, and just to give you hope, I started this work. I mean, you can see in my my AMP article, I was an untenured assistant professor when I started doing this project. So it is possible. I am now a full professor with a professorship. So you absolutely can negotiate this journey. Yeah. Charles.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You even did some work for us to get the feedback of our newly members and the community. And I will just end up with sharing. Well, I already put some, did I share the right screen? The right screen here. Share you mentioned online presence. Can you see that? Can you see the, okay. Mm-hmm. So I put the links on our social media. AFI is maybe not be able to give you every single tool right away, but it's a start. There was, I guess, not something like this, something like for accounting, and we trying to basically provide the help. You build a community. We mentioned here, follow each other as well. You can follow each other on the website. You can follow each other on social media. You met some people today. Today, just by talking, you know that some people have data to share. Some tips to share. So that's the idea. So it is a start. We will be in touch with you regularly if you signed up. And that's it. So I think anything else from the team to say to conclude? All good? Well, Erica, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say thanks everyone for being here. We were not expecting this kind of turnout and engagement. So we're very happy that the idea has come this far.
We had 390 registrants, knowing that there will be people who register to get the video later because of time differences. We hit a high of 125 at some point, which was expected. We say we're happy with 30 people, and still at 90 minutes, we're still over 50. So I think there is strong interest in this. People from all over the place join us. We're very happy. And again, I reiterate that this is not necessarily research on CSR, sustainability, or critical accounting. If you want to do research in mainstream capital markets that you're passionate about and you want to make impact on that, please go ahead. This is not a area defined initiative. Okay, so with that, again, Stephanie, thank you for sharing your experiences, your insights, and we wish you the best. And let's go make impact with our research. Thank you very much. There's always some people who are gonna hang out. That's great. There was no plan to stay around. I didn't offer. I love to see who's staying, and sometimes there's involuntary or voluntary. But yeah, I forgot to say that we could have debriefed a bit quickly, but that's okay. So anyway.
Yeah. So, and Emily, you were asking about the data set. So you can just go to embeddingproject.org, and then you'll be able to find, we have a positions database and the goals database. And if you're having any